Well, hot-footing it fresh from the actual summit is Charleyne Biondi, researcher at the Institut Montaigne and Moody's, joining us here in the studio. Charleyne, thanks for joining us. She's been rubbing shoulders with the great and good there, including France's Prime Minister. More about that later, perhaps. Can I start by asking you about Elon Musk wanting to buy OpenAI? Do you think he's intent on controlling the world or something? He's got Twitter, he's got Donald Trump's ear, he wants OpenAI. Is that the situation? Should we be regulating against him, perhaps?
Well, why wouldn't he want it, right? They're competitors. And I think that's the first thing that we have to remind everyone about it. Elon Musk now has XAI. He has developed XAI, which is a direct competitor to OpenAI, but much smaller. And of course, there's all this history between Elon Musk and Sam Altman, the current CEO of OpenAI. But in terms of what he proposed, I mean, you know, the valuation, I think it's like, what, 95 billion, correct me if I'm wrong. It is so below the current market valuation of OpenAI. I think they're raising money right now, and it's valuated between 260 and 300. So who knows what exactly is the intent? Probably just to annoy a competitor, and a successful one.
When J.D. Vance, the US Vice President, said that Europe should not over-regulate OpenAI, artificial intelligence, whatever we want to call it, the whole spectrum. When he said that, was he right? Do you think that's the right thing to do, or was he acting in his own interest, perhaps?
I think it is so interesting and relevant that he said that right in the middle of an AI action summit that was supposed to be about AI governance, and that ended up being about many other things, such as French announcements on, you know, data centers, and then now the Musk and OpenAI drama. And in fact, before all these market announcements, investment announcements, we were all wondering, I mean, people in the field, what this summit could bring about in terms of governance, because there was already very little alignment in terms of regulations between the US and the EU, or let's say between the EU and the rest of the world. The path that the EU has taken is quite unique in terms of how comprehensive the AI Act is. And one could argue that the previous administration, the Biden-Kamala, well, there was some sort of agreement on certain ethical standards. You know, they wanted, I mean, they could discuss, they could talk. Kamala was at the previous summit, and she seemed to agree with the big principles. But to commit to action, you know, and this is what this summit was supposed to be about, committing to action. This is why it's called AI Action Summit. No one really expected that it could be successful in those terms, and with the Trump administration, even less so, and J.D. Vance just confirmed that. So what we're seeing now in the AI field is that there is and there will be an increasingly fragmented regulatory environment.
And when Vance went on to say that China shouldn't use AI to tighten its grip on power, isn't that a bit sort of disingenuous? Because isn't that precisely what he and Trump intend doing?
I mean, to be fair, that's what everyone is doing. The reason why AI is so strategic, of course, it's for economic reason and competitivity and productivity, but it's a tool of power, and power in, you know, in every aspect of the term. So the AI race that is official and public, and I mean, it was in every campaign proposals, both from the Democrats and the Republicans in the US, you know, to continue to lead in AI, especially in the race against China. So, I mean, it's not surprising. It's not surprising that the US have already implemented so many policies to try to hinder China's progress.
And if this is about power, the whole AI sphere, is it the little people, dare I say, the likes of you and I and our friends and our families, will be the ones who suffer?
I mean, suffer. It depends, of course.
There could be advantages or disadvantages. I mean, try and explain.
Right. What we're seeing in terms of AI impact on society, and not only AI, just innovation and technology. You know, we've talked a lot about the Draghi report recently, that precisely all the report was about was pinpointing the connection between technological lag and economic lag, and the fact that the EU has not been as productive, and that its share in global GDP has considerably decreased over the last 20 years because the EU was not innovating enough in technology. I mean, innovation is technology, but you know what I mean. So the consequences for everyone in terms of economic growth is major. And in that term, of course, there are risks and opportunities to be considered, but And I think everyone in the EU has understood that the cost of not investing and of not doing anything in technology could be very high for society.
So
just as high as doing too much.
this 109 billion euro investment announced by President Macron 24 hours ago, clearly that is then a step in the right direction, but is it enough? Can France become this kind of third way AI alternative to the US and China, or is that just pie in the sky?
Okay, to put, as I know some politicians have tried to do that during the summit, to just say, okay, now we are competing with the big boys. That's a bit of a stretch. But definitely, it is good news for France, it's good news for Europe, and it's quite unexpected. I mean, if you had asked 2 weeks ago, I would have said, well, look, the EU knows it's in a bad situation, it knows it's in a bad place, it has all the goodwill, it has a good strategic cap to say, oh, we need to be more competitive and we need to be more sovereign in the technological sphere, but they don't have the means to do it. So it was all, talks for nothing. And for the first time, actually, for the very first time in the last, I don't know, decade or more, we suddenly have private and public funds that are enough to start to make a change. Now, data centers, is that the best segment of AI infrastructures that they could have invested in? That's to be debated. And it's certainly not enough to just have data centers to become an AI power. Because there is a scenario, I'm not saying it's the most plausible, but it's certainly a possible scenario where the situation we will look at in a few years is like, oh, now we have all these data centers, but they're running on US semiconductors and, Asian semiconductors, and they're running for US big tech cloud solutions with AWS and Microsoft. And so what does that look like? That just looks like, a globalized economy where the big powers have delocalized part of their production to another geographical area.
An AI vassal state kind of thing.
Right, exactly. And in the history of global economy, it doesn't look very good for France. It's more, like the dominance and the dominated. So that would be a very dark scenario. But in the absence of a clear and comprehensive strategy that would include, some projects at the EU level to just enter the supply chain of semiconductors more proactively, or to develop some kind of cloud solutions that are specifically designed for AI. In the absence of that kind of, larger, more global strategy on the AI supply chain, it's possible that this would happen.
So it's a step in the right direction, but it's a long and winding road ahead, Charleyne.
Absolutely.
Thank you for coming in and explaining it all to us, because we needed a proper explanation. And we thank Charleyne Biondi, researcher at the Institut Montaigne and at Moody's, for joining us here in the studio and sharing your obvious insight into the whole AI issue. Charleyne, thanks again for being with us. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed.